I was the kind of guy that would get motivated, decide that I want to flip my life around, do productive habits for 2 or 3 days, but then by day 4, I would just give up on them and go back to living my old life. This cycle of a few days of productivity, followed by weeks of procrastination, went on for years, and I just could not understand why this was happening to me. Also, because I was not consistent with things, I made little to no progress in life, and this just made me feel guilty and anxious, knowing that I wasn't living up to my full potential. But that isn't who I am anymore. I am now someone who is incredibly consistent. I lift weights at the gym and train martial arts 6 days a week. I work on my business, read multiple books a month, meditate, journal, and I've been doing these things consistently for the last 6 years. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 principles that allowed me to make this transformation. And if it wasn't for these principles, I would still be the old me. And these principles are not some wishy-washy feel-good advice. They are going to demand that you make some serious lifestyle changes, but I promise you they are worth it. So let's get right into it. The perception that most people have of being disciplined is that you constantly have to push yourself to do the hard work and you constantly have to stay locked in so you don't slip back into bad habits. But that is not how long-lasting discipline is built. The very purpose of discipline in some sense is to build an environment around you, such that you no longer need to be disciplined, but instead the environment that you have created allows you to almost effortlessly do the hard things and protects you from the bad habits without you having to exercise any form of impulse control. For example, Alex Hormozi, the millionaire entrepreneur, the guy who has basically dominated the social media business space, talks about how he sets up his work environment. He basically puts on earplugs and then puts on headphones on top of that. This way there is little to no sound that can actually distract him. Secondly, the way that he describes his sleep schedule is that he goes to bed pretty early and then he does not really set up an alarm to wake up. He actually lets his body decide how long it's going to need to feel recovered, and when he does wake up, he spends the early hours of the morning just to do deep, focused, isolated work, and rather schedules all his meetings to the later half of the day. There are a bunch of tiny environmental changes that Alex does such that working becomes almost effortless and automated. Take Hamza Ahmed for example, another entrepreneur, and he was probably the face of YouTube self-improvement for quite a while. He talks about how he keeps his phone on flight mode for most of the day, how this allows him not to be sucked into distractions. Another thing that Hamza heavily advocates for is living life based on a routine. Because when you do the same things at the same time each day, then they begin to feel effortless and automated. You don't really have to push yourself towards them. They just become part of who you are. Here's what I recommend you should do to set up your environment. Sit down, get a sheet of paper, and ask yourself the following questions. The first question is, are there things that make it easy for me to do productive things? It could be very simple things like going to bed early, fasting, or taking cold showers, uninstalling social media apps on your phone. Whatever these things are for you, you need to make a note of them and you need to make them part of your day-to-day life. Now the next question is the exact opposite of this. Are there things that I do that make it hard for me to do productive things? It could be that you feel tired and lazy when you consume fast food, or when you stay up late and you have brain fog the next day. Or when you're in the company of this one particular friend, you feel like his impulsive, ambitionless energy just rubs off on you, and that causes you to let go of your goals. Whatever these things are for you, you need to make a note of them and you need to actively try to minimize or completely eliminate them from your life. You're going to come to the conclusion that the more you add things that positively impact your environment and the more you remove things that negatively impact your environment, the more consistent you will actually get at doing productive things. Human beings are creatures of purpose. When we know that something that we are doing is deeply meaningful to us, then it's almost like your body unlocks a lot more energy to get that thing done. Here's something that I recommend that you do. Sit down, take a piece of paper, and ask yourself, what is my ultimate goal when it comes to my professional life? Think of you on your deathbed. What is that one grand achievement that would make you feel like, yeah, I fulfilled my purpose? You might have to spend a couple of days just figuring the answer to this question. But once you do, this thing now becomes your ultimate goal. This is now the guiding compass of your life. Just for example, maybe your goal is that you would like to build a company that generates $10 million a year in profit. And that is your ultimate professional goal. But notice that this ultimate goal is just a direction. We need to get a bit more specific as to how exactly are we going to accomplish it. So the next question becomes, what are the milestones that I need to hit such that accomplishing this ultimate goal becomes inevitable. So maybe your milestones are: number one, you need to get a good system for marketing your business. So you perhaps need 200k followers on Instagram or another 100k on YouTube. Secondly, perhaps you might need an excellent product or service that people actually want to pay for. These milestones are now a lot more specific. Also, these milestones are accomplishable on a relatively shorter time scale, maybe a couple of years or a couple of months for each of these milestones. The next thing you need to do is ask yourself, what are the things that I need to do each and every day to hit one of these milestones? For milestones of hitting the social media following, the answer is you need to learn about content creation and you need to make X number of posts on each platform in a day. For the milestone of developing a quality product or service, you perhaps need to focus on product development, where you spend hours and hours just refining your product and improving. And then the other task is product delivery, ensuring that product or service is actually being easily delivered. Notice that the time scale that we are considering here is either daily tasks or weekly tasks. These are the immediate actionable steps that you need to take to accomplish your life goal of having that $10 million a year company. So what you've done now is essentially tied your daily and otherwise mundane tasks to a much higher purpose that will now unlock that energy of meaning in you. This will allow you to be more consistent at and less likely to give up these daily mundane tasks. If you want to add even more meaning to your daily tasks, then make sure that your ultimate goal isn't just all about you, but it is something more than you. Perhaps the reason why you want your business to generate 10 million a year is so that maybe you can run an orphanage composed of 100 orphans. Or I don't know, perhaps you want your business to do really well because you genuinely believe that your product and services can change the lives of people, and therefore you owe it to the world to have a successful business. When you start catering not just to your own desires and needs, but to the wants of your family or your community or your tribe, then it unlocks something called the superhero gene. You are now even more likely to do these daily tasks because it's not just about you anymore. Your people need you now. I've come to the realization that if there is something more interesting in my life than the productive work that I'm doing, then I have a very hard time doing work because a large portion of my psychological energy goes towards fighting my desires to do that other thing. For example, perhaps you're a young, ambitious guy. You really want to live a productive, honorable life. You want to hit the gym, you want to read books, you want to start your own business. But you're never able to do these things consistently. And one of the reasons why is because you're already getting your dose of dopamine elsewhere. Maybe you're hooked to pornography, maybe you're hooked to weed, video games, clubs, or just casual sex. The choice of poison does not really matter. All that matters is now you have something more dopamine secreting than your actual mission of life. And as long as that thing continues to be part of your life, you are forever going to be facing this mental tug of war, where one side of you wants to pursue your mission of life and wants to become the man you know you have the potential to be. But on the other side, there are all these distracting, instant pleasure-giving activities that are just pulling you towards them. And unless you entirely eliminate this other side of instant pleasures and distractions, it is very hard to be consistent on things that matter. Here's what I recommend. If you are in your 20s, you more than likely already know what your choices of instant pleasure really are. What you need to do is actively try to decrease the volume of these activities and actively try to increase the volume of activities that are in line with your mission. The first couple of days when you're trying to escape the pull of these instant pleasures, it's going to be a bit hard because you might have been consuming these things for years. And it's going to be a bit hard to start doing productive things because honestly, you are now stepping outside your comfort zone. But after a week or two, something beautiful is going to happen. You're going to realize that the productive things that you're doing, they are now making you feel happy. They are now going to become the primary source of pleasure. And when something is associated with pleasure, then you naturally want to do more and more of that thing. Like these days, I wake up at about 3:30, 4 a.m. to work on my business. And for this, I sleep as early as 8:30 p.m. And a lot of my family and friends, they think that I'm just some hardcore robotic guy without any emotions and I'm always just David Gogging my life and doing things that I don't really want to do. But no, the thing that drives me to go to bed early is the fact that I love the feeling of working on my business early in the morning. It's one of the most rewarding experiences of my day, and I cannot wait to go to bed early so that I can feel rejuvenated and get that dose of early morning dopamine. And once you start feeling this way about doing productive things, your consistency is naturally going to skyrocket. But here's a bit of a bummer. This love for productive work can only come when you don't have those highly stimulating habits just plaguing your life. And quitting these bad habits is easier said than done. So make sure that you watch this video to learn how to do just that.